Hey everyone, welcome to another very special episode here on Tone Vase's YouTube channel. As you can see, I am in the car with the one and only Saif. We are driving down to Washington, D.C. for a carnivore dinner, and we are going to talk about what that is and why the crazies are doing it. Saif, say hi.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're also joined by the lovely Leah Wald, as usual, as well as Michael Goldstein.
Hey, how's it going? It's a pleasure to be a part of an episode of Bitcoiners and Cars Getting Ribeyes.
Okay, you knew my point exactly. Tone doesn't know it.
Yep. All right. I'm gonna. Oh, did that not work? I was gonna pop out the live stream.
Oh, and also Tone. What
Yes.
are Rhodesian Ridgebacks bred for? Hunting lions. So,
Yes,
so
that's
Thor has to be
good.
here today. And we'll talk about lions and tigers and bears later.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, I can't seem to get the live chat out. So Leah, you're gonna be managing that. That one is on mute. We're all set. You can kind of see it right there. And I'm gonna get to driving, and then we're gonna have a lot of questions for Michael and Saifeddin about what this carnivore thing is all about. All right, guys, and here we go. We are nearing the end of New Jersey. We are on I-95, something I've been driving the last 2 days since my drive down from Boston. So on our way. So let's just get started. The carnivore dinner tonight. What is the concept of Bitcoin carnivory, and how did it begin?
Memes, like with everything in life, it begins with a meme and it ends with memes. And memes are the most powerful force in the universe. So I think the way that it started is just there was always a lot of overlap in between low carb, paleo, keto eating, and libertarianism and free market economics. And both of them, I think, are just natural. Whenever if you're skeptical, if you're the sort of person who doesn't just follow what authority tells you, and you're likely to try and figure things out on your own, you'll arrive at conclusions different from what authority figures are usually trying to tell you. And so if you do that with one aspect of life, you're likely to do it with more than one. And that's why people who ended up on the low carb kind of eating were likely to become libertarians and so on. So this was my case a few years ago. But then Bitcoin comes along, and you just keep experimenting and you keep reading more and you keep exploring new ideas. Then Bitcoin comes along, so you become a Bitcoiner, and then you hear about the sort of final level of low carb dieting and conscious healthy eating is when you just start eating meat only and drinking water. So about 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years now, I heard about this. I tried it for a couple of months, and it worked really well, and I've not looked back since then. I've been eating it like that. And around the same time, in fact, we started almost the same exact day. I was talking to Michael online, and he told me, hey, have you heard of this new, of this website that talks about this diet where people just eat meat only? And I told him, yep, actually, my brother and I are just about to start it this weekend or something like that. And we both started at the same time. And so the meme power doubled. And then over time, just more and more Bitcoiners seem to be open to the idea, and more carnivores seem to be open to the idea. And I think the two communities are continuing to grow together. People who are new into Bitcoin, the first question we ask them is, all right, so when are you going to quit your carbs? And because they're Bitcoiners, they're likely to be open-minded. They're likely to be willing to entertain crazy ideas, and so they might try it. And maybe not go completely carnivore, but at least understand that meat is food, everything else is entertainment, and if you want to be healthy, you need to eat a lot of meat.
So when did you start this?
It was October 2015, so almost 3 years now. Yeah.
And so Mike, same thing with you around that time?
Yeah, that's about when I first gave it a shot, and then I couldn't help but go back into carbs for a little while. But in December 2015, since then, I have not consumed plants.
Well, yeah, you see, when you say carbs, you mean plants. I come from the paleo diet world, where I can eat plants and still say that I don't eat carbs. So you don't really agree with.
Right. Well, I mean, I come from that world too. I've been, really into paleo diets, and that whole world since sometime in like freshman year of college. So that was, a good 7 years ago or something. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, what people don't seem to understand is like if you have anything that's like plant matter, at least what you can consume of it and actually digest, which, all the fiber and cellulose and stuff you simply can't digest. But the stuff that you do digest, it still turns into glucose in the bloodstream. So carbs is not just talking about the pastries and stuff. It's also talking about just by the time your body is done processing the food, what is it when it gets to your bloodstream? Is it a bunch of fatty acids and amino acids, or is it also carbohydrates? And our diet, we do not consume any exogenous carbohydrates. Any carbohydrates that our body does need, our body creates on demand because it has that capability to do it just fine.
Yeah, and I mean, you start off thinking of carbohydrates as being bread and pasta and pizza and so on, but the reality is, even your lettuce contains carbohydrates. And the problem with it, I mean, I started on low carb, started cutting down on carbs about 10 years ago. I never really followed any of the diets specifically very closely. I never had a meal plan. I never counted calories, but it's just been 10 years of reducing my carbohydrate consumption. And after a while, you realize, even if you're having small amounts, of course, it's a huge improvement going from eating bread and pizzas and pastries and pasta towards replacing all of that stuff with fruits and vegetables. It's an enormous improvement. But after a while, you realize that those fruits and vegetables, when they're your only carbohydrate intake, compared to the rest of the food, what they're doing is that they're getting you glucose in the blood. It's still more glucose than you need. And the real problem is they're addictive. They cause you to crave more carbohydrate food. And so, in fact, what I think I've found after switching to all meat is that it's actually far easier than doing low carb, because with low carb, it's like trying, imagine you're an alcoholic. It's far easier to just go cold turkey and quit alcohol completely than to try and, remain at a level where you're only having, say, one drink every 2 days, because that one drink is just going to want you to drink more. It's an addictive drug. It's just like carbohydrates.
In fact, my introduction to carnivore was, and more memes here, is from Amber O'Hearn, who is the ex-wife of Zuko O'Hearn, who's, the famous cypherpunk and now Zcash guy. So these memes run deep in the fabric of the universe. But they had an article from years ago that was explaining, first of all, they're big proponents of the ketogenic diet and the benefits of the ketogenic diet. But the recommendation on how to get started was literally just eat meat, for this very reason of you don't need the plants, and including plants and other, like, having to count things, you're just putting complications and complexity into your diet, such that you're setting yourself up for all kinds of cravings and just ways to fail. When you set it to, zero or like a sort of binary, then it's very easy to follow. And we find this, and it's quite frankly the best life hack. Like I don't think about anything as far as food, except for when I'm memeing with my friends on Twitter.
Gotcha. Hey, before I get to some specific questions about the diet, Leah, you want to jump in here? Thoughts, comments? Go.
Saif, you told me that chicken's a vegetable. How is that possible?
Well, if you're a bird and you can't fly, you're a vegetable. But also, I mean, just chicken is an animal that we've bred for domestication, and it's like a highly processed animal. And the problem with chicken is that it's a decent source of protein, but the fats in chicken are not optimal for your body. And so if you want to cook chicken properly, you need to cook it with animal fat, butter or ghee or tallow or lard or something like that. And I mean, nothing wrong with that. It's just honestly having figured out how to cook chicken properly, and I can grill chicken properly. But after you figure out how to to grill it properly, you just realize it's just not worth it. Just get a goddamn steak. It's much easier and tastier. Even if it's a little bit more expensive, you know, the extra time that you need to be preparing the chicken for proper grilling is just usually not worth it. I mean, nothing wrong with it, but it's not optimal.
Hey, Saif, so does that apply to other white meats like pork?
Turkey?
I don't know. I don't really eat pork. I don't really. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't eat it, and I don't know if it's.
Well, I'll jump in on the pork question because I think when we think of pork as a white meat, I think that's a function purely of the fact that a lot of the pork that you find in American grocery stores is of very low quality, which is also the same with a lot of chicken. Like chicken in other places is a much more heartier meal. And, you know, if you get some like pasture raised chicken eggs, like the yolk is really deep color because it's just chock full of more nutrients and stuff. But pork is actually a red meat. I'm really jealous of, you know, the Hungarians that we know, because they get to eat a breed of pig they have called the Mangalitsa. And it's a big old pig that's woolly like a sheep. It looks like a sheep with a pig snout. And it's extremely fatty, and the meat, it looks like a ribeye when you eat it. So
yeah, no, I love ordering like wild boar when I see it on menus.
Yeah. So all of these foods, what you find with carnivores is like, you're totally fine eating from anywhere in the animal kingdom. It's just that over time, people find that, especially in America, beef is the most satiating thing. In other places, like where you can have the Mangalitsa, you might, you know, focus on pork. And in other places, I know when Saif is back home in Lebanon, he eats a lot more lamb. There's these foods that, because they are deeply nutritious and very satiating, very fatty, we tend to converge on those. And everything else is sort of like, we'll eat it and we enjoy it, but it doesn't give because food is no longer a source of entertainment, but a source of nutrition. You know, we don't find ourselves seeking out different flavors as much, like to get that variety of you know, different kinds of meats. And we're just looking for what is that meat that gives us that very satisfying satiation.
So if I can jump in. So Tone and I are newbie carnivores. We were goaded into this situation, but also for this episode to understand a bit of it. Now we were, and I'll just say it, Tone, we were a bit not just skeptical, but worried about what we would be able to eat / drink if wine was available or not. So some of the questions we sent to Saif and to you, Michael, I think are maybe questions that other people have had. Also, I'll just say that telling people this week that I'm a carnivore has been hilarious and awesome, but also the responses, you guys maybe not totally remember back when you first said carnivore, but there's some interesting questions as well that have come through. So, Tone, I didn't know if you wanted to go, but then I'd love to ask some of the questions that we had.
Well, yeah, let's go with the drinking side of things. So as you look, Saif and I are both have our Starbucks beverages. Now you are drinking what?
I'm drinking coffee. I hate to admit it. It's a vibe.
Saif!
Yes.
What?
When I'm in America, I end up drinking a lot of coffee. It's just the way that America works. You have to have coffee.
Right.
You told me not to drink coffee.
Well, you're a noob. You shouldn't. I'm an expert. I can handle my coffee.
Tone, how many espresso shots did I have last time you were here?
No, I had to literally. I thought I had to make pots of coffee. Anyway. Yeah, you are ridiculous. You have an actual addiction to coffee. But,
I know.
I am drinking tea. So that was the question. What's the deal with beverages, and not only tea or coffee, also things like coconut water, which I love, and things like alcohol, and which alcohol is like ideal from best to worst?
Water. The answer to the beverage question is water. That's what's ideal. So red meat and water. One of the most influential people in this carnivore movement, maybe like the godfather of it today, is a guy called Charles Washington. And he's not a very high profile guy. He's not he doesn't, he just runs a couple of Facebook groups. And one of the most memorable things he said, you know, whenever you're hungry, just eat red meat until you're not hungry. And whenever you're thirsty, drink water until you're not thirsty. And problems start when you start asking, well, what if? Or can I do this? Can I do that? What about cheese? What about milk? What about alcohol? What about that? So the ideal answer to all of that stuff is, if it's not red meat and it's not water, it's not optimal for you. Then it's just a matter of, how much less optimal you want to go and the impact of it.
What trade-offs are you willing
what
to
trade-offs
make?
do you want to do? So I mean, look, first of all, I'm not your mom, and I'm not going to punish you if you eat anything. I don't care what any of you eat. It's your life, your decisions. Do whatever you want. So me saying that something is bad, don't get angry at me, because I'm not going to do anything to punish you if you do it. But it's just the reality. Water is optimal. Now, the way that I look at it, this is my own interpretation, is that food is nutrition, and your digestive system is meant to bring nutrition into your body. So your digestive system should be for food, which is meat. Meat is food. That's it. So eat only meat. Now, plants are recreational. Plants are drugs. Plants are addiction. Plants can be medicine. Plants can be entertainment. Who am I to tell you what to do and how to get your entertainment and what kind of pleasure you want to get from these things? With drugs, there's always a trade-off. There's an upside, there's a downside. It's up to you to know how to manage them. It's up to you to know how to use them responsibly. But the way that I think of it is that it's not optimal to be eating your drugs. Your digestive system is a bad way of running a drug habit. If you want to have a drug habit, don't eat large volumes of indigestible matter for the little addictive substances that are in it. It's much better to be drinking these things, or consuming them just in a far more easy to absorb way.
Well, it basically extracts those compounds.
Yeah, so you're better off if you're gonna be taking carbohydrates. You're better off having a little bit of alcohol than you are eating a pizza. So if you're gonna be doing drugs, at least drink something, because maybe it's a little bit of fun, whereas a pizza is just going to make you bloated, and it's not even
right. Well, no, but that's the other extreme, right? Like, basically, I stayed pretty carnivore this entire week, except the Friday night dinner in Boston after the meetup, where we went to a Mexican place, where I had a little bit of sour cream with the meat on my plate. I couldn't stay away from guacamole, and I have a problem staying away from maduros, which are the sweet fried plantains.
Yeah.
So how bad were my cheats at that dinner?
Michael, you want to pass judgment on that?
I think that's maybe like third circle of hell.
No, seriously, come on. Avocados can't, like...
Yeah. Well, look, like, it all depends on the individual. Like, when we say things, slightly glibly, but also completely honestly, that, vegetables are poison, plants are poison, that doesn't mean that the poison affects everyone the same way. So different people with different guts and different, immune systems and stuff will handle these things much differently. And so some people might have a strong tolerance to these things, and eating them is not going to affect them. The big point that I think needs to be made is that, based on our experiences with carnivory and what we see in the experiences of others, some of these things can be have surprisingly nonlinear effects. So there are people who found that even a small amount of plant matter caused tremendous amounts of symptoms of various disorders and stuff. So if a person is eating something and they still feel good, then it's likely not that big of an issue. That also being said, you should probably consider trying experimenting removing them for a while, like long enough to adapt to like a real carnivorous, like fat burning metabolism, and then add them back in and see if your body still holds up. And the reason is that when you're eating a lot of different foods, it can be hard to know which thing in particular or which combination of things in particular are causing some kind of issue, maybe an issue you didn't even know you had until it kind of got isolated. And so when you eliminate things, you can start to notice these patterns and find out it's like, oh, it was the broccoli. And then you can find that there's other plants that you can tolerate much better, and you can add them back in. But you know that you can actually tell which one it is, as opposed to just eating a bunch of different stuff, kind of vaguely feeling like crap, and just like, having no clue what's going on.
So Michael, so you really don't eat anything other than like what are your cheats? Either because you can't stay away from them, or because you have experimented and you feel that they don't hurt you.
Well, I mean, there's the other aspect. It's like once you've gotten to the optimal thing, like it's hard to, like, it doesn't. I don't have cravings for one, and anything I eat, like I know is going to be suboptimal, and I like my lifestyle as it is, so it's hard for me to want to even bother. That being said, it's party time. It's party time when I bust out the sparkling water.
Okay. Wow. So you don't drink? Do you drink alcohol?
No, I've never been a big drinker, and I stopped drinking even before I went carnivore. So it's been at least 3 years since I've had a sip of alcohol.
So.
And you have no craving for avocados, since that was already a topic.
No. Okay. I actually think avocados are completely overrated. I was just talking to my grandma about this too. She literally never saw an avocado until they moved to Texas in the 70s. I'm sure my other side of the family, who's been in Texas for a very long time, had seen avocados, but avocados were not something my ancestors, going past a couple of generations, had ever seen in their existence. So I don't see a need to add it into my life, and I think it's a giant hipster fad. I don't actually understand it.
All right, Leah, get in there.
Absolutely. Okay, so a lot of people obviously have questions about health and nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
So following up on what you were talking about, which was interesting, that through kind of a diet elimination, that you are able to isolate certain foods, vegetables that don't work with your system. So I'll just start with the baseline, and there's a lot of different interesting levels on the nutrition questions that I have for you, Saif and Michael. First one, just to start with, right? Everybody just blanket says, there's no way you're getting, your full amount of nutrition just by eating meat. As a small example, I'll just leave it there. Obviously, that's a question.
Everyone says vitamin C. We're all gonna get scurvy.
Yeah, vitamin C, B12. If fish is gonna be another question, but omega, etc. So yes, how can you explain? Do you take supplements, etc., of it fulfilling the amount of nutrients that you need?
This is more of an intuitive thing, and it sounds kind of silly, but when you think about it, I actually think it's practically a legitimate argument, which is that we are made of red meat. And so we should expect that red meat has all of the things that our bodies made of red meat need. And when we look at the nutrition of different foods, meat, first of all, it has everything we need, which we can see clearly, through empiricism by all the people eating and not showing any clinical signs of deficiencies. On top of that, meat is in a much more bioavailable form because our guts, despite what people believe, are actually very, very efficient for digesting meat. And so anything in meat is going to be much more readily absorbed by the body than anything in plants. So Saif might have more to add on that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are a lot of examples that you could see of people who have been doing this for many years. There's a family, the Andersons, they've been doing it for 20 years now. The man is, I think, turning 60. His wife is in her late 40s. They look absolutely astonishing. They don't look their age. They look really good. And, if there were any health problems, they would show at this point. There was an Arctic explorer,
Wilhelmer.
Wilhelmer Stefansson, in the 1920s. He went into a hospital, him and his partner Anderson. They stayed in a hospital for a year under doctor's observation for an entire year, eating nothing but meat and drinking nothing but water. And they were testing them all along, and their health improved after a year. So we have very, very strong, compelling evidence that, if there were deficiencies, they would show. On the other hand, if you take anyone who eats anything except meat and You put them in a hospital for a year and you wait a year for them, they will show clinical deficiencies. They will get weaker. There's no question about it. Nobody who does a vegan or a vegetarian diet does it without supplementing. You need supplements. And in fact, most people think supplements are just a normal thing that, you know, you should do it. And it's a huge industry of people who advertise this idea that, you know, get your vitamins and get your this and get your that. Well, it turns out once you eat meat, you know, it's one of these aha moments. The light bulb goes off. Why the hell would you need a supplement if you're already eating? You know, you're already spending most of your day stuffing stuff down your mouth. And after that, you still need to take nutrients in a pill. Then there's something wrong with your food. So I don't take any supplements, and I haven't for all this time. And I haven't had any sort of clinical deficiencies of anything show up. I haven't had any health problems. I haven't had blood tests recently, but when I did them, everything was fine. There was no problem with it. So
plants also inhibit the absorption of nutrients. So like glucose competes with vitamin C. So
I
if
think
you
we're
have
losing
more,
it just a little bit.
if you're consuming a lot of glucose, you have to consume more vitamin C to be able to compete with the glucose to get in there. And then stuff like magnesium. The glycolytic process uses much more magnesium. So if you are a fat burner, you don't need as much magnesium. So you can actually only have to take in a little bit in order to get correct sort of reference levels in your blood. And this has been shown clinically.
Follow up on that. A lot of people are asking on the blood question, what do your blood work results actually look like? Is there a difference from what our blood results, or not ours, because Tone and I are carnivores too?
Yes, our blood is blue. You guys have that blood.
I mean, I'll put it this way. One time I did get blood work, and the doctor was looking at my numbers, and then he looked down again. He had to do like a double or triple take, because after looking at the numbers and out loud saying like, wow, these numbers are really good, these are excellent, he realized, wait, you're the guy who only eats ribeyes. And just prior to the blood work, he told me that, a ketogenic diet would like kill me or something. So to see this, and then I had to sit there and give the doctor an entire lecture on nutrition and tell him about Weston Price and stuff. And of course, I never went to that guy again, because I don't want to, I'm not supposed to be lecturing the doctor.
Now, another follow-up. Oh.
Yeah, you should at least not.
Yeah.
Saying.
All right, Leah, you got any other questions?
Yeah, Saif, if you said something, I lost it. I don't know if it's just my stream. Michael, you're there?
I am.
No,
guys, Saif. All right.
we are.
Okay. Well, until they look pretty funny. They look very happy right now.
This is probably.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, and I mean, you should have seen me 10 years ago. Then you'll see how much better.
I may just ask you questions until they come back.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that too.
So
we're just trying to say he used to be fat and now he's not.
I think that's what he was going to say. Question. So are there particular blood types that this is better for, / are there blood types that maybe people should stay away from this from?
So this is a common question, because that was a pretty a popular conception. I think there was a book on it or something. I like the way that Sean Baker puts it. If your blood type is red, then carnivore is a good diet for you. And to further drive that point home, Charles Washington, who we mentioned earlier, he's the moderator of the great Zeroing In on Health Facebook group. Amazing guy. He has a great interview with Sean Baker on Sean Baker's podcast. And he mentioned, because this of course came up, and he mentioned how, I forget what blood type he is, like O negative or something. He is the exact blood type that they're told, you should stay completely away from meat. And yet he's been on a, zero carb, all meat diet for 11 years now, the guy runs marathons. He pretty fast too, if I remember correctly. He also he doesn't even stop for water or anything when he runs, because when you're a fat burning machine, your body just has so much fat it can just keep going. That's why we're good as persistent hunters. So this guy's
Forrest
great.
Gump.
Yeah, exactly. You can only be Forrest Gump on a good high fat diet, but yeah. So for him, if the blood type hypothesis, as people believe, was true, then it shouldn't be the case that people of all blood types seem to be showing absolutely fantastic results with carnivory, including people with the exact blood type that shouldn't be having success.
Yeah. Safe, Tone, did we get you back? Okay. Guys, just talk. At some point, we'll know. Okay. It's an interesting follow-up. Yeah, Tone, Safe, just talk. At some point, we'll know you're back on.
Hey, guys, can you hear us?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we got you. Talk again.
Okay.
All
Can
right.
I just add one small thing on the blood type question?
You heard
Look,
it.
I mean, I think honestly, this is part of the narcissism of modern consumer society, that everybody thinks, your iPhone has to have its own unique, distinctive cover, and your social media identity has to be unique, and you think everything about you is unique. And so obviously you need to have your own unique diet that takes into account your genetics and your family and your history and your blood type and your horoscope. And the reality of the matter is, sorry, you're not so special, snowflake. You're just, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, a couple of 100 years ago and going back a million years before, your ancestors only ate meat, or only ate as much meat as they could, and only ate plants when they absolutely had to. But this notion that, where I come from this particular village in the north of that particular country, and therefore, for us, we need to have our this particular carbohydrate. No, you don't. And I really highly recommend people check out a guy called Weston Price. This for me is just like there's Ludwig von Mises in economics, and he's like the red pill, the complete opposite of everything they teach you in university. In nutrition, there's a guy called Weston Price. He's a Canadian dentist who traveled around the world 100 years ago, roughly. And I mean, it's really astonishing the depths that he traveled at that time. And he performed a study that we'll never be able to replicate, probably, because we'll never have that kind of sweet spot in history, where he traveled all over the world and found groups of people from every society. And, wherever your ancestors are from, he met either with your ancestors or with people who are very similar to them. And what he found is that, and what was unique about that particular period is that he was able to find, say, he'd go to the, say, Europe. He found villages in Europe that were very isolated in Switzerland, and that were eating the same food that they had been eating for the hundreds of years, that had not started importing industrial food, had not started importing flour and sugar. And he looked at what they ate, and he looked at their health, and particularly their dental health, which is an enormous indicator of the rest of your body's health. And he would compare that to, the village a few kilometers away from them, people who are almost genetically identical to them, but have been eating modern industrial stuff. And then he shows you the health of those people, the health problems that they have. And he did that in Switzerland. He did that in northern Canada with the Eskimos. He did that with the Africans in I think it was the Maasai Africans in Central Africa. He did it in Pacific Islands. He did it all over the world. He really traveled everywhere. He took samples of people's food, sent them back to his lab in Canada, and analyzed the nutrition content in them. And he studied their dental health, looked at their health. And it's a really, really astonishing and very thorough study. And the main conclusion you arrive at from it is that every society in the world, before the invention of modern industrial sludge that we mistakenly call food, every society in the world had a simple diet, which is eat as much meat as you can. And if you're going to eat plants, you use your plants as a method for ingesting animal fat. So when you start running out of animals, when you don't have enough animals to feed everybody at all times, just a diet of all animals at all, which is what happens when people settle down and live sedentary lives, you're not able to move around enough to get enough growing herds so that everybody can eat meat all the time. What ends up happening is that you start having to grow your own plants. But what you do then is that you use the plants as a mechanism for maximizing the nutrition you take from the cow. So instead of killing the cow and eating the meat and having a lot of it go to waste, you preserve all of the fat and then you cook the plants with the fat. And over time, we've learned to make plants slightly less toxic and slightly less harmful for us. And mainly we do that by mixing them and cooking them with animal fat. And so today, 100 years after Weston Price, what we do right now is people think that plants are food and they eat the plants without even having the fat with them, without even having the fat that is necessary to make them digestible. And the result is that for the first time in human history, we have a majority of humans being overweight, being obese, being pre-diabetic and diabetic. And it's an enormous catastrophe. And I think, reading Weston Price is really, it's an astonishing book. I highly recommend it.
To get back, I want to the sort of people thinking that they're all unique and stuff. A sort of conclusion that a lot of us have come to and seems to be held up by our observations is that humans differ not in what is optimal for them, but what suboptimal foods they can handle.
Exactly.
So there's no other animal that people talk about in terms of like, lions eat zebras. We don't talk about, different lions needing to get their micronutrients from this. If they're in this part of Africa, they have to go for this shrub. And if they're in this part of Africa, go for this shrub or anything. We talk about diets in other species as a species diet. And I don't think humans are different in that respect. Instead, depending on what ecological niche you found yourself in such, because of that, what economic circumstances you found yourself in after we killed off all the megafauna and had not as much fatty meat, you had to find different things to adapt to. So different people in different parts of the world have adapted to different plants to make up for that fact. But based on what we've seen, I do think that every human would benefit from a more meat-heavy diet.
So interesting. A follow-up on that, and a personal story, it was a question to Saif, which was that I am hypoglycemic. So I was very worried before starting this and asked Saifedean, is it, dangerous for me specifically, special snowflake, but from Tone, you're still there, from a health perspective, and / is there a certain way that I should do it that may be a bit different, maybe smaller portions during the day rather than, I don't know. And Saifedean had a great answer, and I've actually loved this week.
Before Saifedean answers, can you just explain what hypoglycemic means?
Low blood sugar. So I go through sugar really, really quickly. So it spikes you down. So like if I have candy and then it's boom, but more than everybody else. So I typically will have to eat a lot of snacks during the day. It's good that they've been healthier recently, but otherwise my blood sugar totally drops. So because of that, I do have to eat kind of a lot during the day. So that's hypoglycemia. And so I did ask Saifedean, is it dangerous for me?
Before you get me in jail, let me just say I'm not a doctor. I don't give out medical advice. I'm not about to start playing a doctor on the internet. But
while in the car.
Yeah, and I like meat, and I think people also like meat, and that's about as much medical advice that I'm going to give. Having said that, however, I'll say, hypoglycemia, it's not low blood sugar. The cause of it is the repeated spikes of blood sugar. So, you're crashing harder, but the real problem is that you're spiking your blood sugar. That's the unnatural thing. So if you stop spiking your blood sugar and your body adapts to the fact that you can get your nutrition from fat rather than from sugar, then I think that's going to probably make things better. Although, I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to claim that definitively, but many diabetics witness enormous improvements in their health by switching to this. I've seen a lot of anecdotes of people who have had this. So I would expect that, and it makes a lot of sense. If you're getting your nutrition from fats, then your blood sugar doesn't spike. And then if your blood sugar doesn't spike, then there won't be a crash in the first place.
Yeah.
So the problem most people have with this is that most people have been told that fat is bad for you. Fat clogs your arteries. Fat is bad for your heart and your kidneys and God knows what else. And that's just garbage. That's garbage science from government-funded universities that are funded by, from government universities funded by industrial agro production that wants to sell you shitty grains and tell you that that stuff is food and that that stuff is good for you. It's not. Fat is the optimum fuel for human beings. You're getting a lot of energy in a very small little amount of volume and weight of food, and that's optimal for your digestive system. And your body can adjust to fat metabolism very easily, and it will tell you how much fat you need and how much you should be eating. It shouldn't be a problem.
So I'll respond to that and switch it over to you, Michael.
Oh yeah.
If that's okay. So actually, I was surprised, and it's been the best in my life. Actually, I will fully admit to you guys, like you've kind of convinced me. And I had like actually serious, fantastic energy all day. Saif recommended that to start listening to my body more, in that go for a big meal in the morning, but if I'm craving a ridiculous amount of steak, just go for it. And so actually I ate kind of very little during the day, and it actually was fantastic. So I will say that was validated. Yeah, don't smile too much, Saifedean. Just kidding. But so a follow up to what Saifedean's saying, and also that it actually did work. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very happy to hear that. You know, the interesting thing is that prior to the whole, I guess they like discovered insulin and they figured out how to manufacture it. And so after that, insulin became the sort of the medicine for diabetics. It was like, oh, if you're eating more sugar, just pump more insulin in your body so your body can handle it. Instead of trying to look for the root causes. Prior to this, the eating a meat-heavy diet, like we're that we promote, not as doctors, was actually the sort of standard treatment. So you can go back to like Banting was a famous doctor who promoted this, but there's been others like you know, there were doctors like Blake Donaldson who that was technically after, but the point is it's like it's not so much like a fad so much as just we're doing things how it's always been done.
Tone, I've been commandeering
it's agriculture that's the fad.
Let me know if you're losing them too, or
I keep losing them. It's the coffee.
Say that again? No, it's us. It's us. So I mean, we're driving. Hey, Leah, remember the list of questions that I sent in?
Sir, I got
Hey, the list of questions that I sent in the group. Anything else?
Yes, I got them up.
Anything else that's interesting? Like, look, here's the thing, right? Like, when I drink water, I have like a jug of water. I'm using a filter in that water instead of using just regular tap water. And I usually put mint leaves and I squeeze a lemon in that jug. Mm-hmm. Big deal, no deal, little deal.
That actually might
not
be
optimal. Definitely
that might be just
I'd recommend not when you're transitioning.
Wait. Okay, I got Saif's answer. Michael, what was your answer?
I didn't totally hear Saif's answer.
Shit.
But
right. So I have Saif said not optimal when you're transitioning.
Probably yes. That being said, water is actually a very interesting topic. And some people find like this is I should say it's like rare cases, but specific people have found that they've gravitated towards specific types of water. And some people like to mineralize the water because if it's like too distilled or whatever, it could like leach minerals from your body. So for stuff like that, it actually could make sense why something like lemon water might not actually be bad, just in the case that it's not going to leach as many minerals from you. But beyond that, like if you like the taste, compared to anything else you're going to eat, it can't possibly be doing as much harm as.
All right, so like the mint leaves and the lemon, or stay away from the mint leaves in the water as well.
It's fine. The mint is fine. It's the lemon probably that has a little bit of sugar. The problem is that when you're adapting, it's probably going to start making you crave more and more sugars. Mm-hmm. But generally, if you're getting the mint leaves, you're getting the essence of the mint seeping into the water. That's much better than eating the mint itself. The mint itself is the body of it contains
Okay,
carbs.
got it. Hey, what are the questions that I have in that list, Leah, that we haven't covered yet?
Quite a lot. You ready? And I'm gonna read them straight because the way you wrote them are hilarious. All right, I'm gonna start with this one. Okay, Tone said, I went to sushi yesterday. Sorry. Okay, I went to sushi yesterday and ordered sashimi. So that's all good. But
Oh, yeah, fish. We haven't even talked about fish yet.
Yeah.
we're getting there.
Let's talk about fish in general first, and then we get to that question. So, fish, go. Who wants to go first? Saif or Michael?
Fish is fine. Nothing wrong with fish. It's good, but if you've gone carnivore for a while, you won't be satisfied by a meal of fish. Like I've had, I'd grill fish. I've had a kilogram of grilled fish before, and still had to put another steak on the grill, just to make sure that it's a proper meal.
Is cooked fish versus raw fish?
I think both are fine. The whole cooking versus raw thing is something that puzzles me. I don't really know. I eat both, and I'm happy with both. And I'm open to being persuaded, but I think I'm fine just as it is.
All right, so both are perfectly fine to eat on the carnivore diet.
I would say so. I don't know if somebody might have.
There's some acute cases where fish just actually does not react with the body as well. But once again, it's one of those things. If it's from the animal kingdom and you don't notice that it causes some problems, eggs cause people some problems sometimes. So, some people might want to stay away from eggs. I don't really eat a lot of eggs. Likewise,
I eat eggs every day. I eat at least 3 eggs a day.
Yeah, and if it doesn't cause you an issue, there's nothing wrong with it. And likewise with fish, if it doesn't cause you a problem, it's fine. But like Saif was saying, it's just not as satiating. As much as we say chicken is a vegetable, I say that fish is a dessert. And I've actually been at restaurants at a previous job with coworkers, and they came around asking what I wanted for dessert, and I was like, well, the tilapia sounded pretty good. The waiter thought I was joking until the coworkers like, no, he's not joking. And while all of them had a bunch of sundaes, just like guzzling ice cream into their faces, I was eating some fish.
Follow up on fish. Farm raised fish, wild caught fish, cold water fish.
I don't know all of the differences on that. I assume there probably are issues with the farm raised. I know they put dyes and stuff in the fish. There's some weird stuff going on. I'm not a fish aficionado. So I really don't know what the optimal fish is to eat. That's up to you
given a choice, definitely go with wild caught fish, but it's you're not going to be eating fish all the time anyway, I presume, because it's just not going to be as satiating. So I think occasional fish from farm raised might not be a problem, but I don't know. It depends.
Shellfish is also perfectly fine.
I think so. I don't have a problem with it, but again, my answer to all of those things is try a month of meat and water only, and then start introducing those things and see what effect they have. So if you've had a month of that and then you try shrimps and then you don't feel as good, well, then you know your answer.
Okay, so I think, you can finish reading that question, but the thing is, I did go for sashimi. I wanted to stay, as carnivore as possible eating sashimi, but now you kind of dipping it into soy sauce. So that's bad, right?
Soy is absolutely haram. There are very, very few things in the world that are worse than soy. In fact, it's even tell you it's the one thing that people shouldn't be eating. Of all the plants that people eat, this is the worst of them. However, when you ferment it, it's the least harmful way of having soy. But still,
this is why the Japanese have traditionally done a lot of these kinds of processing with the soy. But in today's world, when you're consuming soy, it's just it's straight into the bloodstream. It's pure xenoestrogens just invading your endocrine system.
Okay, so here's the question. How bad is it that I dip my sashimi in soy sauce?
I can't quantify that.
I don't know.
Okay. Following up on that, okay, regardless of the scale of...
Here's the thing. Yes or no, then? Next time I order sashimi, don't touch the soy sauce is what you're saying.
I would say no. Personally, I think it tastes awful, but that's a personal preference. But
you could use salt instead of the sashimi, instead of the soy.
All right, so salt isn't that bad for you.
I don't think so. I don't know. There's a lot of debate about salt. Some people think it's good. Some people think it's bad. I use it. I think it's fine, and I think it's necessary because you need minerals. Although, having said that, I think if you walk around barefoot on the soil, when I spend a lot of time on the beach, we're back in Lebanon, if you swim in a salty sea and you walk around on the salty sand of the beaches, you will get a lot of salts and minerals into your body naturally just through contact with the earth. So you might not need it as much. However, most people obviously don't do that, so you probably do need salt in your food.
I think it's also there is in meat itself, there's all of the minerals you need. However, if you're cooking the meat, people will tend towards needing more salt, although there's also a lot of people who cook their meat and cook it quite a bit and don't consume salt. So that's not a universal. Likewise, there tends to be a trend that people that are eating more raw meat are consuming less salt and perhaps none at all. So it's an interesting observation, and I think some of the clinics have seen that to be the case. But in general, like if you're eating a carnivorous diet and you're consuming too much salt, there isn't so much like a thing is too much salt per se. Sometimes for some people, not consuming salt can lead to issues.
So following up on that.
Yeah, go ahead. Go with the questions. How much time do we have you guys for? I mean, we still have an hour and a half of driving, but do you have to go?
I mean, I was off on time zone, so I have way more time.
I gotta go in about 10.
Okay.
So following up on that, beyond soy and salt, the main question is, what about spices, and especially spices derived from vegetables like garlic, salt, you know.
Spices aren't food. So that's the first thing to understand. Spices aren't food. So when we're talking about like actual, like if you don't put a pile of spices on your plate to eat with a spoon. It's just a small amount that adds flavoring. So what I would say is spices are fine. However, even small amounts of certain spices, depending on who you are, can cause issues. I know there's certain spices that cause me issues, so I stay away from them. I don't really consume a lot of spices.
So on a quick follow-up, right? So here are the 3 vegetables I eat the most with pretty much everything that I cook: onions, garlic, and ginger. I usually chop them up and I put them in my food. So in order for you to get that craving, I can just replace them with the spice powdered version of the 3.
Yeah, that's much better, because then you're not getting the body of it with all this indigestible stuff. You know what you're after from these things is not the indigestible.
It's the flavor.
Body, it's the flavor.
Exactly.
So getting the spice is much better.
Well,
so isolate the flavor.
I was consuming them for their health benefits, but if you guys are teling me that there are no health benefits,
yeah, a lot of that is
like the flavor.
I'm not sure.
I don't buy a lot of that stuff.
I think certain spices and certain compounds in plants are very good for you, specifically to counter the effects of eating other plants. So this is what medicine and botanical natural medicine does. You eat this plant to fix the effect of eating that other thing, but usually you're taking the essential oil, or you're taking the spice, or you're taking something that's just trying to take the essence of the plant. I don't know enough about that stuff. I think there's a truth to it, that I think it can be effective. But I just think that, if you just don't eat plants at all, then you don't get any of these problems.
The other problem that I see from a lot of it is that some of it may very well be true, because like these compounds, they are chemically active and can have an effect on things. And I imagine some of those effects would be positive. But the problem is they see a study that vaguely says that there's some kind of association with having a compound present, and some group of people had slightly less risk of this. And so they take like a very reductionist thing of some compound, and then people immediately say like, oh, and see, that's why you need to eat a bunch of broccoli, because this one obscure compound that's found in trace amounts in the broccoli showed this bizarre relationship in an associational study that wasn't even good science. And so people, especially just the whole media complex we have, are very good at sensationalizing very trivial, like bad science. So people start like, oh, I guess I need to get my, turmeric or whatever. And they start, filling their cabinets with the supplements and the, different spices and stuff like that, because they're building up a more and more complexity off this kind of very, very weak foundation of knowledge.
Yeah.
So,
All right, gotcha. No, because this helps a lot, because one of my favorite meals is literally like beef tartare or even pork tartare that I make at home. But if I can't, chop up onions, garlic, and ginger into my raw ground meat, it becomes very difficult to eat. Like, there's no flavor.
That's also, by the way, I think to some extent that's because people have been conditioned for so long to be chasing after flavors that a lot of the food I eat, I would have considered bland before, and most people would currently consider very bland. But because I no longer consume a lot of spices and consume a lot of varieties of food, it's actually it's a rich, delicious meal for me. So actually, if you gave me some raw ground beef, I'd probably find it absolutely tasty, even though you would taste it and think like, wow, this has no flavor.
okay, I have 2 questions, Stone, and then you get to host for the rest of the ride, although they look frozen again. Okay. With that said,
And Leah,
I don't know. Talk, Tone, and we'll know that you're back.
no, well, I mean, we're
Okay.
kind of back, but any other interesting questions that I threw in that chat like a month ago?
No.
Great. Okay. What about things like mayonnaise? It's mostly made from eggs. There's some vinegar involved. Like just to put some kind of flavor on the meat. I know Leah loves mustard.
Yeah, I'm gonna step in real quick, if it's okay. Like, these kinds of questions go back into what Saif was saying, which is like, we know that beef and water are optimal. And what you're doing is you're asking questions. I mean, maybe you want to eat these foods and that's fine. But it's really trying to distract from the fact that you can't just eat meat and drink water and be healthy. And we can go down. There's thousands and gazillions of different foods out there.
Well,
I'll just add one thing specifically about mayonnaise. So what you buy on the shelf right now is this industrial.
no, I'm willing to make my own.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you wanted to make your own, the best way
Much
to
better,
make
yeah.
mayonnaise would be, instead of using the vegetable oil sludge hydrogenated crap that they sell in supermarkets, which is what goes into making the current mayonnaise, and then adding all sorts of industrial stuff to it. The best way would be to make mayonnaise is to use actual animal fat. So if you cook a steak, the tallow, which is the
I always try to save the bacon grease when I cook bacon.
Yeah,
Perfect.
You can make excellent mayonnaise from bacon grease or from cow tallow, and just mix that with. There's a recipe out there on the blog of Amber O'Hearn, which we mentioned earlier. I haven't tried it myself, but I think this would be very good for eating leaner cuts of meat or cuts of meat that are not delicious. If you can't afford to have a ribeye for every meal, sometimes you might buy the cheaper cut, and then you can have it dipped in the mayonnaise that is made from the fat from the fattier meats that you cook, or from the fried tallow or fried fat that you make. I think that's fine. I mean, egg yolks go into it, and egg yolks are extremely healthy. They're the good part of the egg.
Oh yeah, no, I hate egg whites. I love
egg whites
yolks.
are pointless. The egg whites are just the casing of the white of the good stuff.
The less confrontational way to put what I was saying is basically just like, whatever food you want to eat, find the way to fill it with as much animal fat and animal protein.
Yeah.
And it'll be healthier.
Yeah, no, the reason that I'm asking is like, okay, look, I'm gonna find it. I can't see myself only eating red meat and only drinking water. I can't see it. But if I'm gonna cheat, I want to cheat in the most healthiest way possible. Like, for example, on the paleo diet, I have a list of the alcohol I can drink from most compliant with the paleo diet to least compliant. The least compliant with the paleo diet alcohol is beer. Yeah. So I don't touch beer. The most compliant alcohol with the paleo diet is either champagne or tequila. And I'm perfectly fine with, if I'm gonna drink alcohol, I'll drink tequila on the rocks with some limes or champagne. And that is like 80 or 90% of all the alcohol that I drink when I'm full core paleo. Then I move down into wine, into sangria, because I know they're not as compliant. But I try to be as compliant as possible. If I know I'm cheating, I still want to cheat in the most like compliant way possible.
So on that, in that sense, then, and like the alcohol thing is, it probably holds true with this. But for any food, from most compliant to least compliant, is basically based on its ratios of animal fat to other nutrients. Like,
all right. And
how much animal fat and animal protein versus not animal fat and animal protein. And when you get to the bottom at like vegetable oils and stuff like that, it's the literal opposite. So
I also want to ask a question about the cuts of meat and the most preferred animals. But Leah, since you have to go, your final questions.
Perfect. Okay. And yes, everybody, I have been watching your live chat. I'll throw the rest of.
Yeah, are people enjoying this? Like, I can't see the live chat. How is the reaction of the Bitcoiners on this?
This is hilarious. I can't stop laughing, and I put some of the great ones at the top. Okay. These I do think are interesting. Okay, well, again, just to wrap up, I think for now, and then you're kind of done on the health issue ones. And I actually I'm going to start with Saifedean on this one because I thought his answer was great and made a lot of sense and was very funny. Everybody asks, aren't you just going to be very constipated?
No. Quite simply, no. I mean, it's really, once you start eating this way, you find this to be ridiculous because you're made out of meat and your stomach is made out of meat, and meat breaks down and it's easy to absorb. It becomes a liquid very quickly and it just gets absorbed. People who have been trying this diet for years, who have fixed their metabolism, end up going to the bathroom maybe once a week. And that's not because they're constipated. That's because they're not eating garbage. They're not eating shit that needs to constantly go to the bathroom. You're eating food that's almost entirely nutrients, and then the food is broken down into the nutrients that feed your body and the water that goes out in the urine. Now, if you're eating plants, and I mean, there's no nice way of putting this. So
this is why the cows just
exactly
shit all over the lawn that they eat.
Exactly. This is why cows are eating all day and shitting all day, because plants are essentially, I mean, cellulose, and cellulose is indigestible matter. And you know what happens to cellulose in your body? It comes out of your body almost in the same form as it comes in. You know,
but as it's going through, it's scratching up your intestines, causing mucus to come out in the intestines, which causes more digestive issues and stuff.
If you're eating plants, you're eating a lot of indigestible stuff. And that's why you need to continuously go to the bathroom to try and get rid of it and to remove it. And you don't have the stomach that can handle it. If you want to look at the animals that have the ability to digest plants, look at cows. I mean, a cow is just a giant digestive system to turn plants into food for us. It's like outsourcing the digestive process. They eat and shit all day, so you don't have to. You know? They take the plants.
That's gotta be a meme. Somebody please meme that.
They absorb all of this indigestible stuff to take the tiny little amount of nutrients that are in it, and then they spend all day eating these little amounts of nutrients to put it into a very easily accessible form for you, which is the ribeye and the steak and the ground beef that you eat from them. And then you don't have to keep, eating indigestible stuff and going to the bathroom. So on the contrary, the not to get too scatological here, but the bathroom experience is highly improved under this diet. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, there's a question on there is like, how deadly are their farts? And I'll point out, so when you're a carnivore, you fart way less, if at all. Farts are not normal. We treat them as a totally normal bodily function, but it's actually
go back to cows. Go back to cows, and
guys, I gotta go. I really do.
Oh, yeah, have to go.
So I'll just tell you one of the questions, and then you guys can get to them. The two questions, and I'll put the last one in the chat. One on this topic, I was going to switch it to you, Michael, regarding cows. People are very curious about animal milk and milk in general. Mm-hmm. And then the last one that I would love if you guys ended the show on is affordability. People who are actually interested in carnivory, is ground chuck an okay, alternative? What are some other cheaper but also just like okay within the carnivore diet meats. And with that said, goodbye. You guys are hilarious. Sabine cannot wait to see you later. Tone, you silly individual as well. Cannot wait. You will be there in spirit, Michael, and you will send lots of pictures. This was hilarious and lots of fun. I'll send the last question with you guys, but milk, animal products, on follow-up from cows, and then to end with how can the rest of us carnivores make sure that we can afford this carnivore diet?
I mean, and I'll keep it going a little bit. I want to know about different cuts of meat, and then the difference between animals that eat vegetables and animals that eat animals.
Okay.
So to finish, to finish, like, farts are a sign of digestive distress, and it probably means that something about your diet needs fixing. Vegans are notorious for having deadly farts. There's a great Portlandia sketch of a vegan restaurant where they have an outdoor patio where they can all go to do their farting. So that's that. So yeah, farts are not a concern on a carnivore diet.
Yeah, when it comes to the question of milk, with dairy products, the key thing to understand is this: the good part in the dairy, the good part in the milk is the fat. The bad part is the sugar. So the worst dairy product that you could possibly eat is skimmed milk. Skimmed milk is not food. Skimmed milk is absolutely poisonous crap.
As Ron Swanson says, the only thing I hate worse than liars is skimmed milk. Skimmed milk is lying about being water.
Yeah, skimmed milk is just absolutely terrible. I mean, skimmed milk is the industrial byproduct of the production of butter. And they found out sometime in the 19th century that it was useful for getting cows and pigs to become fat, to feed them this abomination and give them all of the refuse essentially from the dairy, from the milk. Give it to cows and pigs, and to pigs in particular, and you make them fat. So actually in the 19th century, it was well known, and still known today, if you're a farmer and you want to get your pigs fat, what you feed them is skimmed milk and corn. And that's essentially what most people eat for breakfast today.
It helps humans get fat too.
Yeah, it's and this is no coincidence. Yeah.
The other thing with milk, it's not just the sugar that is an issue in milk. It's also the dairy proteins. The dairy proteins seem to cause a lot of people autoimmune disorders. So there's a lot of allergic reactions and other debilitating problems that people can have by consuming milk. So this is why there's a lot of vegans who talk about having gone vegan and certain issues all alleviated. And with that, actually, I kind of agree with them in some of their criticisms of dairy, especially sort of modern industrialized dairy that you would be buying at the grocery store. When they're removing that from their diet, I absolutely believe that it's totally helping them by removing it. And so any carnivore should definitely, at the very least, experiment for a while without dairy and then slowly add it back in. But milk and cheese and some others should be treated with suspect until proven otherwise. I mean, even with cheese, a lot of carnivores like cheese, but then a lot of them find like, hey, this thing's actually just really addictive. And it's the one food that they still have in their diet that starts causing cravings. So they just stop. And it's also, it's one of the few times that carnivores can get constipated, is some people find that if they're consuming a lot of cheese that it can cause constipation. So
quick follow-up on cheese. Is like sheep cheese or goat cheese any better or like than cow?
It depends on the sheep and the cow and the goat. I mean, there are a lot of stories about it. A lot of people think goat milk and camel milk are superior in many ways. I personally suspect it's just that because because most people have eaten so much cow dairy products over their lives, that they're far more likely to have the problems that this causes. Whereas, if you move towards another kind of dairy, you're not going to get the same problems.
Or that those other dairies are not as industrialized.
Yes,
So
yeah,
it tends to be perhaps higher quality than just getting milk from the grocery store.
And generally, I'll say this about dairy. Ideally, I think you want to avoid it as much as possible. But So on one extreme, you have skimmed milk, which is the worst thing possible. On the other extreme, you have ghee, or clarified butter, as it's
Or
called.
about like half and half.
Clarified butter is like the best thing possible. Clarified butter is just only the fat from the dairy. And even people who have dairy intolerance problems, some of them can't tolerate ghee because it contains supposedly, or it's meant to contain almost zero of the problematic compounds. So generally, the fattier the dairy product, the better. The less fatty it is, the worse. If you're going to have cheeses, at least try and go with things like brie, mascarpone, the things that are heavy in fat, and not the things that are light in fat. Although still, I think none of them are
Right.
so half and half is half, basically.
Yeah. So ghee is going to be the dairy that has zero of the dairy sugars and zero of the dairy proteins. So most of the things that would cause any kind of issues for people is not.
All right, so the question of affordability. Let's make this one quick because I have two others that are probably more interesting.
Yeah.
Well, with affordability, I think, if you don't mind me, Michael, taking that one, I'll say, look, I mean, you can eat this diet for any budget. You could be having Wagyu ribeyes for every meal and spend hundreds of dollars a day on this. But you could also do this diet, I would say, for as little as $2-3 a day. And the key to that would be to just, a cheaper cuts of meat and buying in bulk from your butcher. Particularly, your butchers, they get all of these hypochondriacs turn up and spend 10 minutes, telling them to cut up this piece of meat to take out this little thing. So they don't like to spend a lot of time on this. And if you're going to be eating this regularly, just go to your butcher and tell them, hey, I'm going to be needing 2-3 pounds of beef a day from you. I want you to hook me up with a good deal. They'll be very happy about it. So they'll save you cuts. They'll give you a good deal on things because you're going to be buying in volume. So cheap cuts are fine. And if you know how to cook them, you can do very well with them. And then the key to that would be to use the fat to cook them. So you can take the strips of fat from the animal, use these to cook the unfatty cuts, or the tougher cuts.
Very
ground the tougher cuts,
so to speak.
and you can ground the tougher cuts and use that. And if they're ground, they're much easier to digest. But also the secret, this is really the superpower, and this is the most delicious food you could possibly have. It's bone broth. Bones are extremely cheap because we live in a world in which people don't eat nutrition. Bones are possibly the most nutritious thing that you could eat. And your butcher might give them to you for free if you ask.
Yeah, like my fish guy gives me fish heads for free for fish head soup.
Oh,
and there was a
delicious.
lot of meat on there. Like literally, if you boil that big fish head like this, he'll give them to me for free. He wants to get rid of them.
Yeah,
it's a highly nutritious part of the animal too.
It's the most delicious and most nutritious. I had a great uncle who owned a fish restaurant, and he used to say, if you didn't eat the fish's head, you didn't eat fish. And I think he had a point. And it's also true with bones. You can take the bones, boil them, and then the soup that comes out is going to be extremely rich in nutrients. It's extremely cheap, and it's extremely easy to digest because it's liquid. And then if you try that, it's really amazing. And once you take that, if you have bone broth, you can put any.
Are we talking about any specific bones, like cow or even chicken? Would chicken work?
Any bone, yeah. Chicken is delicious. Chicken bone broth actually is delicious. But once you have that, then you can put any of the tough cuts of meat in it to cook for a couple of hours, and it'll come out absolutely delicious. That's, I think, the key. So make bone broth, and then you don't have to buy any expensive meat. You can buy the cheapest meat and still make incredible meals out of it.
Yeah. And on top of that, so if I needed to do more penny pitching, first of all, you can go to websites like mygrocerydeals.com, search for meat in your area, and you can go buy in massive bulk quantities and throw it in your freezer. A lot of people do this. The other thing is, like Saif was saying, go to the butcher. All these other people, they want fat and all the good parts trimmed off. So if you talk to them, you might be able to get offcuts from them for extremely cheap, because it's just the bits that would either be otherwise thrown away or thrown into ground beef. And you can just buy those, and it won't be the nice big steak, but it's all the nutritious food you need. And if you're on a budget, then who cares about having the nice steak? The other thing, I mean, I personally was at a farmer's market yesterday, and I ordered 5 pounds of grass-fed American Wagyu fat I'll get it next weekend. But it was $2 a pound, and 5 pounds of that will last me, at least like 2 weeks. So that's nothing. And then I can go buy cheap lean meat to go with it. And that'll also cost nothing. So if you are on a tight budget, you just need to, not think so much.
GWI is Baltimore.
Yeah, fine. I know.
Okay.
If you're penny pinching, just don't worry about steak cuts. Just think about what is the nutrition you need. It's a lot of animal fat and good quality animal protein, and you can get that in pretty much any shape and size you can imagine for really cheap.
Yeah, all right, gotcha. So since we're talking about cuts of meat, there are all kinds of steaks. Do you have an order of what is, optimal from like which cut? Like filet mignon weren't mentioned. Those are the nice restaurant. Doesn't matter. What's your preference?
So I personally go for the very fatty cuts. Especially as a very lean person, I need to be consuming a lot of fat to get that all in my body.
Right. So what are those?
So ribeyes is basically my favorite.
What are the fatty cuts?
Ribeye is the fattiest cut. I actually get them from Costco. So I get the whole subprimal. It's a 15 to 20 pound slab of meat.
We're in the middle.
Is that the audio is kind of cutting off, so I don't know if.
Yeah, because we're now in the middle of a giant rainstorm.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll come back in a second. We're getting some.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're in the middle of a rainstorm.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of a rainstorm, but you give it a try. You should still be coming through the YouTube channel, so we'll let you go finish up on what are the fatty cuts and what cuts should people be looking for.
Different people, if you have a lot of stored fat on your body, you may find that you don't need as much animal fat in your diet, just because you are providing your own animal fat to consume. And since you are fat burning metabolism, you just start burning your own fat. But for like the really fatty meats, I get the ribeye. And I go to Costco, I buy 15 to 20 pound slabs of meat. They're untrimmed, so it has this big, nice fat cap on the end. And I eat that too. So that's sort of like the most fatty, as well as different parts of the rib is really going to be the best thing for fatty pieces of meat. Going from there, the chuck, parts of the chuck can be very, very fatty. And some portions of the brisket are obviously going to be very fatty. If you want the lean meats, that's more of the back of the cow, like the rump roast kind of stuff.
Got it. All right, we should probably finish up because of the rainstorm. Probably can barely hear us with all the rain hitting the car. This has been great. I know I learned a lot. Any closing thoughts on this? Michael, go first, then we'll have Saif. And then we're going to go ahead and end this. You want to mute while you speak?
Yeah, I guess I'd say just that this is something, it sounds crazy. It is kind of crazy, although, once you've gone down the rabbit hole as far as I have, it doesn't seem crazy at all. What I would recommend people do is go to my website on the matter called Just Meat. It's justmeat.co, where I've compiled a ton of resources just on everything related to the diet. Do your research, but first and foremost, just give it a try. I don't think you're gonna, unless you have a very acute set of health problems, I don't think there's anything dangerous. But once again, I am not a medical doctor, and if you have concerns, please go talk to your doctor before you do anything. But give it a try. And the reason I say that is because there's so much about this lifestyle and what we understand from it that you just won't get until you've tried it. You won't know what it means to not have hunger or to have like these weird signals from your body until you've tried it. And so a lot of people, they're just kind of armchair theorizing about, oh, well, my vitamin C, too much protein on the kidneys. And, you know, they come up with all of these problems with it, but they've never actually tried it. And so there's just like a whole world of things that it's not until you try it that you kind of pick up on the possibilities here. So more, I guess to sum it up, is more experimenting, less theorizing when it comes to the nutrition. And I think you'll find great success eating a more meat heavy, if not completely all meat, very high fat animal-based diet.
Yeah, I agree, and I really can't think of much to add. I'll just say, you know, after doing this for a while, I came to the realization that, you know, eating is an instinctive activity. I remember when my daughter was born, within the first minute of her being born, she started breastfeeding. So she had not learned anything about life. She knew how to breastfeed. She knew how to reach out for the breast in order to feed. And that's just completely instinctive. It's not something that you need to teach. And all animals are able to figure out how to eat and what to eat. It's just an instinctive activity. And I think it's absolutely astonishing that we as human beings put so much thought into the process of eating. But once you try to just eat meat and drink water, it's going to feel so right that, you know, at some point, I don't like even discussing it or talking about it with people, because it's just not something I like to waste my mind with. Because, you know, your mind is supposed to be thinking about things that are more interesting and more important than just what to eat, which is something that your instinct and your gut can tell you without you having to think of it. And so the most liberating aspect of this diet is that you don't think about food anymore. You don't have to read about research. You don't have to worry about the right balance of what to eat. You don't have to worry about any of these things. You just eat whatever you need to. And the amount of time that it takes you to eat, the amount of time that it takes you to prepare your food becomes so much simpler, so much easier, so much shorter, basically, that, you know, the quality of life improves just because of this. You're so much well fed, and you're spending so much less time on worrying about food. It's an unbelievable life hack. So, you know, there's really, as far as I'm concerned, there's no going back from this. Maybe I'll have a cheat meal here and there. Maybe I'll not be perfect about it. But the notion that I will go back to a life where my food is varied and I have to cook all sorts of different things and I need to try and figure out how to cook plants every day, I think I find it very hard to believe that that will happen.
All right, guys. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I have nothing more to add. I'm definitely going to try it. Just so you guys know, here is what we're dealing with right now as far as our driving situation. And this is much better than it was like 10 minutes ago. The rain just pretty much stopped. Oh, man. It was getting really bad. But so we're about halfway to DC. Be there soon. And the links that Michael mentioned are already in the video description. Go ahead and check that out. And thank you so much for watching. It's been great having Saif in the car, talking all kinds of stuff, including this. And we wanted to bring that to you. So we're going to go ahead and end the live stream. And there you go. One last look at the road now that the rain has cooled off. And we're going to go ahead and end it here. Just click on that live stream in the corner there and hit end live stream.